What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Jacked Ramsays. Danny Marang here on a Wednesday. Had to check the date there. Typical Wednesday night, I guess. It's been a little while. We've been incredibly busy. By we, I mean me. The TV show has made things a little bit more difficult to stay up on everything and do as many podcasts as I'd like. In the meantime, I have tried to compensate by writing as much as possible. And I'll try to weave in some of the stuff that I've been writing about recently, the high level takeaways, the Blazers kind of forming an identity. But we have a lot of questions to get to. We've got some news to get to. And then I want to kind of take a look at where the team is at as a whole right now. And I think that's probably the best place to start because we haven't really talked about what the Blazers have done over the last week. And they've gone 1-2 in these 3 games, and it's kind of funny hearing people like they're winning too much for the people that really want them to tank. And I don't think they're really going to have to worry about that right now. They've got an offensive rating that's 28th in the league and a defensive rating at 16th, according to Basketball Reference. And it's a little bit different to me when you take a look at the league info. Kind of where they fall. Cleaning the glass has got the Blazers offense as 28th and the defense as 12th. So the defense actually looking pretty decent so far. I think if they can finish in that top or middle third, that's a pretty good spot for them by the end of the season. But let's take a look at the last couple of games and kind of where we are and kind of what's transpired. We don't have to look back too hard into the last 3. The Oklahoma City Thunder won 37-114. Obviously, the third quarter in that game and the third quarter in the Phoenix Suns game were the things that everybody was talking about. And I don't think those are necessarily huge issues right now. Well, let's take a look and see how the trends maintain. There's only 8 games into the season. The flip side of it's only 8 games, like it's only 8 games, but it is also 10% in the of the schedule, or 9.8 to be exact. But it is crazy how fast those all came through. You had 8 games in what it amounted to? I think it was 12 days. 13 days, something along those lines. It was a lot. It came fast and in a hurry. Having 2 days off has been wonderful. They'll be back at it Thursday and Friday in a back-to-back against San Antonio Spurs, Minnesota Timberwolves. But I want to talk identity about the Trailblazers real quick. And I was diving into some stuff, which leads to mostly me clicking around in Second Spectrum and going, I wonder what's going on here. What's going on here? What's going on here? And what I came away with was that the Blazers are forming an identity around being a paint team on both sides of the floor. And by that, I mean everything that they're doing is being driven by getting to the paint offensively and making decisions from there, as well as being able to protect the paint. You take a look at where the team stands right now, and I'm not going to give away all the goods because that's the point of the Patreon. But the Blazers are the second best paint defense team in the entire league, according to Second Spectrum. Okay, and what that means is the way this is kind of carved up. I'm sorry, I'm trying to refresh my notes here in Second Spectrum. Pull up my shot location. Let's try that again. There we go. The Blazers right now are a team that they faced a kind of a low amount of shots at the rim. Through 8 games, they faced 289 shots, which is the 9th least, or would put them at, 20... Where'd it go? Oh, it got all bumbled up there. 21st in the league, okay? 26th percentile, bottom quarter of the league. The shots per 100 possessions, they fall all the way down to second last in the league. As far as they limit shots at the rim. They are making it a priority. The Clippers, the Atlanta Hawks are all at just under 37 shots a game. What's interesting is the Blazers are also holding teams to a very, very, very low effective field goal percentage, 11th in the NBA. Top third percentile or bottom third, depending on how you slice it. And they're giving up basically league average shot quality. What this means is, even if you want to say that the Blazers are a team that hasn't faced teams that are super, super rim pressure-y. I know that's a very technical term. But you can say, oh, they played the Pelicans. They aren't putting a lot of rim pressure. You know, they were missing guys, and the Suns take a lot of jumpers, and the Thunder take a lot of jumpers. Yes, you're right. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. However, what you're seeing is that when the Blazers are tested, they are performing. They are bothering shots. They are making it difficult. They are efficiently protecting the rim, which is leading to that kind of league average or plus league average, if you're looking at cleaning the glass, defensive rating. The stats are out there now. We talked about this summer when we kind of knew what the roster was going to be and who was going to be in the rotation. Everything that kind of came from that. This is the biggest and longest team in the NBA. And you can feel it on a nightly basis. The flip side of all of this is that the Blazers are also very effective at getting to and being about that life, as it were, getting to the rim. Their shots attempted per 100 possessions, they're fifth in the NBA. They've taken 383 shots in the paint. So if you're keeping score at home, they are essentially outshooting their opponents by 100 shots over 8 games. The difference between the two, they've given up 289, they've taken 383. That is, over 7 games. What's that, 12 and a half? Just doing math in my head real quick. The problem with this is, and while they're effective in the sense of total and raw points in the paint, they are dead last in effective field goal percentage, or in this case, just field goal percentage because it's all paint shots. They are barely shooting above 50% in the paint. And the big part of this, this is where you will see the optimist in me. They are performing incredibly poorly in the paint. And it's not just one guy. Ant, Scoot, 2, Denny, Chris, and the biggest defender right now, Jeremy, are all drastically underperforming by leaps and bounds below what they should be, right? You take a look at cleaning the glass, their description of everything. The only player on the entire team that is performing above league average for their position in the paint at the rim is DeAndre Ayton. And even he's below average for what he has been. After that, everyone is below the 50th percentile. The next highest person is Ant. He's in the 37th percentile. It's bad. Jeremy Grant is in the 10th percentile. Denny's in the 16th percentile. Tumani's in the 28th percentile. The shooting has just been abysmal. Like, the one glowing / shining light of the Blazers shooting so far this year has been Toumani Camara, Ryan Rupert, and Chris Murray, taking and making threes. That's where they're at right now. I guess you could say DeAndre Ayton by extension because he's 4 of 9. But if you're looking for the optimist side of this, Ant's not going to continue to shoot this poorly. Jeremy's not going to continue to shoot this poorly. Denny's not going to continue to shoot this poorly at the rim. Those 3 guys, I have a supreme level of confidence in figuring this out. That's 100%. Those guys will figure that out. And then once that happens, then the offensive tack can stabilize a little bit. I think you won't see as many weird first and third quarters. At least that's how I see it right now. So there's your glass half full. If you want to read more about it and Donovan Clingan's effect and what the Blazers are trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, go to patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays. It's super granular, super detailed. I'm going to expand on that more over the next couple of days, even more. So, but I wanted to talk about that in reference to the Suns and Thunder games, because what you see is that the Blazers offense, when they start to hit threes and it opens things up just a little bit, how much more effective they can be. Now, they couldn't hit twos to save their life against the Suns. My God, it was a travesty. But the Suns couldn't either, so that's why they were able to stay in that game. And what I want to see over the next couple of games is they're playing the Spurs, Victor Wembanyama, the Minnesota Timberwolves, 3 out of the next 5 games, which means Rudy Gobert, Rudy Gobert, Rudy Gobert, Rudy Gobert, and then the Memphis Grizzlies, who are going to feature Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. So they're basically going to see the biggest, longest, strongest dudes in the paint, and if they can somehow kind of finagle their way in there, I think that's a very interesting thing and an interesting development, even if they're losing games. Now, that's the shameless plug out of the way. Let's get to the news of the day. And this is going to eat up some of the questions that came through, which, again, thanks you everybody for submitting questions. I appreciate you. I can always find them. I posted on Twitter. If you've got them, you can also DM them to me. You can email them to me. I'll be honest, I don't check my email nearly as often as I should. I'm sorry. But as it pertains to Shaedon Sharpe, I've been kind of dancing around this for the last 10 days or so, as it seemed like Shea was getting very, very, very close to returning. With shoulders, you never really know. I would say that the wink, wink, nod, nod, him being questionable is a very good thing. They're not going to put him out there unless he's ready to go. So if he ramps up and everything just, it's a good place for them to be. Now, what does that mean? Does Shaedon Sharpe start? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And it was like, well, Denny's playing poorly. Shaedon needs to start. I'll tell you this. You look at Denny Avdija's on-off splits right now, I don't know if you want to take Denny Avdija out of the lineup. I'll be honest. You're the two most kind of important players right now or I guess your 3 most important players in consistent effectiveness are Ant, Denny, and 2. Like Ant's shooting performance has been not as good, but like what it allows everybody else to do with him on the floor is pretty significant. So the only problem Denny is really having right now is finishing. The 3-point shooting is it is what it is. Like I want it to come around and I want him to get more corner threes, but him on the floor is good for the Blazers. Like that's just kind of where they're at. He does all of the other things that are valuable for them. And I would imagine Shaedon's going to be on some sort of minutes restriction, which is always easier to control coming off the bench. So I would imagine that's something they're probably going to look at. 2's playing out of his bleeping mind. Like, full stop. 2 has been a monster. 2 has probably been their most consistent / reliable two-way player. Across the board, his numbers are like, his usage is stabilizing. It's up ever so much. But his points per shot attempt, his assist percentage, his assist usage rate, his turnover rate, like everything's improved. His turnovers are down. His assist rate is up. The points per shot attempt, while low, is still better than it has been. And his shooting, while he's struggling at the rim like everyone else, his 3-point shooting, again, limited sample size because he's taken only 27 threes, he is, I think, falling in line with this kind of, I don't know if you would call it like a placebo effect, but there's something that when I watch Denny that it's very contagious. Denny grabs every rebound and goes. I've seen Ryan Rupert over the last couple of games when he's made appearances. Every rebound, he doesn't look for Scoot. He doesn't look for Ant. He doesn't look for Denny. He doesn't look for anybody else. Head down, go. And there's this contagious attitude about Denny that just seems to push through the team. There's a progressive aggressiveness that seems to be popping up more and more and more right now. That's very, very interesting. If Denny starts just finishing at the rim alone, he turns into like a 15, 7, and 5 guy. Like, which is kind of what I project him to be. and be that kind of connective tissue. They're still not running a ton for him in that vein. I would not right now I would not change the starting lineup. And I thought because they're playing so well, I just think with where they are right now, I think this makes sense. Let Shaedon go out there and earn this. Let him go out there and do it kind of what Chauncey said in the past of like to keep what you kill. I've seen a bunch of people already. Scoot needs to play more. Shaedon needs to play. Starts when he comes back. Donovan needs to start. None of those things are true. None of those things are true. Scoot has not done anything to justify getting more minutes than he's getting right now. Donovan Clingan can't handle the minutes beyond what he's getting right now. His role, and I think the team has done a very, very, very good job of narrowing the scope of what Donovan Clingan needs to do. And that is be an absolute monster in the paint. Just gobble up everything. Be big, be a deterrent, be disruptive. Just own the paint. Be Rudy Gobert light. Right? Offensive rebound, put back, screen and roll, little DHO action. You catch above the break on a three where you can check the wind and let that thing fly. Go for it. Otherwise, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And I'm not calling Donovan stupid. It's a military acronym, folks. I think they've done a fantastic job of limiting where he is at. I saw some people like, why is he not playing against the Thunder? Because it's a 5-out lineup, and that man is like, I'm going to stay in the paint. And you saw him like, I don't want to go out here. I'm not comfortable out here because he's 7'3" and 285 pounds. Yeah, let's like narrow the scope of what we're asking of him. And I think if you let him build on that, that's the way it goes. And it was like, well, he needs to learn. He needs to learn the basics in the NBA. That's what he needs to learn. Totally okay with it. Let him go out there and play 15 to 17 minutes a night. I don't care about the foul trouble. Keep it simple on offense. Keep it simple on defense. And when you've got that locked down, and because here's the thing, we're going to hit the rookie wall 30, 35 games in around Christmas. Let's see how he feels then. If he's still heading up the curve, all right. Now let's see if he can handle a little bit more. On a good night, if he's got it rolling, let's bump him up to 18, 20, 22 minutes. Let him have a little bit longer shift. See how he does. I have a reeling suspicion that he's going to crash and burn for about 2 or 3 weeks because he's going to be exhausted because he's a massive human being who's never played that many minutes that fast over that many games in that short of a span. And that's going to be totally expected. And if he doesn't hit that wall, I'll be incredibly impressed. I talked to him about his conditioning, and he wasn't saying I'm out of shape, and he was like, oh no, I'm getting there. But there was I'm still working on some stuff. The NBA's faster. It's bigger. It's quicker. You're just gonna, that's tough. And it's okay. It's okay to take your time. And with Shaedon, because of the injury, I want them to be very careful. If Shaedon goes out there and somehow gets injured again, and you can't play scared. I'm not advocating for that. But let's be measured in the approach. Make sure everything, go out there, play a shift. You good? Okay, cool. Get through the next shift. You good? Okay, cool. And let's start working your way up. And if he goes out there and he grabs that thing by the neck, just absolutely just balls out, then we can talk about changing up the starting lineup. But I think Chauncey has done, and this is, I know I get put as like the Chauncey truther or something along those lines. I think Chauncey's a very average coach, but I think he is above average when it comes to motivating and keeping these guys all down the same path. It's pretty clear that they've told Scoot Henderson, you're going to have to earn it. That's why Delano Banton's getting on the floor. That's why Ryan Repair and Chris Murray are getting on the floor. That's why you're just seeing guys getting opportunities, because if you're one of those young guys, they're telling you, go kill what you eat, or go eat what you kill. Two's out there busting heads, and guess what? He's out there playing. It's not hard to see. His minutes per game last year at 24, he's at almost 31 this year. Pretty clear. And he's still got room to improve. So you look at it, and I like the motivation. I like what the idea they're doing. Let Shaedon go out. And here's the thing. Shea coming back means Roops, Chris, Delano, and some version of that are going to lose minutes. Now, could they cut Jeremy's minutes down a little bit? Sure. You could probably shave 2 off for him, 2-3 minutes a night off. And that allows maybe Denny to slide up to the 4, where Denny at the 4, his numbers are bonkers. Again, stupid limited sample size, but I believe he's like a plus 20 at the 4. It's gonna be interesting how they're gonna have a few too many guys, and this was always going to be the case this season until moves are made. And I fully expect Tease and Jeremy to be moved in, around the deadline. That's not state secrets. When and if that happens, that crunch kind of disappears to an extent, because the Blazers are going to have to take some players back. So you're going to have to figure out the pecking order of how that works. And this is kind of the scene from Batman, with Joker, snaps the pool cue and throws it in half and throws it in between 3 people. Like that's a thing that they have to figure out. And this is I was talking to an executive last year, and I was like, hey, you were targeting this player. I know you were targeting this player. You ended up going with this player in the draft. Was there a world that existed where you wish you could have got them both? And he's like, not really. He's like, you have to think about this. When you draft a player, you have to have some way to develop them, some path to development. And if you have too many, and there's just no way for a guy to get on the floor, or they're both kind of the same level and you're deciding back and forth, it's not really fair to the organization to get a fair assessment or to the player to get consistent time. So you have to kind of work through this prioritization metric or matrix, as you were, to kind of work your way through it until somebody, rises above. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for Shaedon to go out there and do that. The other injury return, Robert Williams III, has been cleared. He did not play against the Pelicans. I thought there was a chance he would play, but the Pels are not a team that I think, with how many injuries they had, made a ton of sense for Rob to play against. Who's he going to go out there against? Missy or Tice? Otherwise, it was a bunch of guards, and it's maybe that's not the best game for it to come back. The Spurs, probably a little bit better version, although, Wemby's weird, so we'll see how that goes. But I think that at least makes more sense, and certainly against the Timberwolves. Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and they play him 3 times in 5 nights. So, and one thing to consider, if Rob does play tomorrow night against the Spurs, I would not expect him to play on the back-to-back, especially on his first return. To be honest, I wouldn't expect him to play any back-to-backs between now and January, to be honest, unless he only plays 5 minutes. That's where we're kind of at with that right now. So, but I'm thrilled to see Rob back. It's basically been a year, so that's the 13th. So he's a week away from being out for a year. And I think that's a big deal. I'm very, very happy for him. All right, I think it kind of covers the grand scheme stuff. Let's get to the questions, and we'll dive. I didn't want to dive too much into the Shaedon stuff because everybody asked about it. But this is a question also that's been popped up a ton from Guy BM at Guy BM 370. How do you see Avdija's struggle so far? Do you think it has more to do with the way the team is using him, or is it more specific stuff he should do better? If so, can you point out what? I mean, ball go in hoop is the biggest thing. If he finishes at the rim at the level that he has been at his whole career, let me pull his up real quick. Let's see. I want to say he's 65-ish% at the rim historically. Yeah, he's 65+%. Right now he's 10% below that. He's at 55%. It's not great, Bob. So historically, he's been a guy who is in the middle upper third, a plus finisher, not the best finisher, but a plus finisher. If he can improve that alone raises the value, right? That's what makes him better. Right now, he's in the 2nd percentile for forwards for effective field goal percentage, and that's because his 3-point percentage is in the tank. He's 5 of 27 on threes, 19%. And he's in the 16th percentile at the rim. I think it's very much a new city, new culture, new team, new role, and trying to figure out where he fits in. I talked to him after the game against Oklahoma City, and I was like, hey, man, how are you feeling? What's going on? Do you feel like there's anything really going on? Is there things that anything specific you think needs to change? And he was pretty adamant of like, no, I really just think I'm not worried about the shot. It'll come around. And it wasn't a passing me off like I'm fine. It was just like, no, I'm truly fine. I think I'll be okay, or I know I'll be okay. Not a think. And like we get to 20 games and this is still an issue, then I'm raising eyebrows. But I think it's probably just a slow start, to be honest. I would like to see them do more. Sorry, a little cough there. I haven't seen too many. I want to pull these up real quick. Where I'm pulling up Denny as the ball handler. They very, very, very run any actions outside of DeAndre Ayton as a screener for Denny. Currently, right now, the screeners that Denny has worked with, DeAndre, Jeremy, to Donovan, and Scoot. And DeAndre Ayton has been the screener 41 times. JG to DC have all been the screener 4 times, and Ant and Scoot have been the screener once. I'd like to see some more wing screens from 2 and Denny. I'd like to see 2 kind of put in that short roll, like the play that we saw at the end of the game where Delano Banton was the primary ball handler. He ran a screen with pick and roll with Tamani. They stepped up and hedged and dump it over the top to 2 plays 4-on-3 downhill. They spaced DeAndre Ayton to the weak side corner, makes the defense make a decision. DA cans a corner 3. Like that was like, oh, like that. I want to see that for Denny. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see more wing screens. I want to see more inverted pick and roll. Even though Scoot and Ant aren't good screeners, I still would like to see it. Even if they get a little bump screen, a little go screen, anything that could put a guard they're trying to hide, basically, or somebody smaller to where Denny can take advantage of that mismatch. Like that's like Denny's 6'9", 240 plus pounds. I want him to just and the thing is, like, I've liked his drives. He just bully balls, hits that decel, Luka-esque in the sense of like, I'm just big, strong, and mobile, and I'm just going to hit you with my shoulder side to side to create the space and get there, except for instead of finishing like 80% like Luka, he's finishing like 55%. So I think that's probably one key I'd like to see. I don't think they really need to change a ton there, but I would like to see that prioritized a little bit more. Logan at Logan Rip City. What do you think the team will do about starting the lineup with Shaedon returns? I'm assuming he'll be coming off the bench at the beginning, but if he takes the leap, he can't. It feels like you got to be the starting 2 moving forward. It also feels like you can't take that spot from Tumani. Do you think Chauncey would consider bringing Denny off the bench given his play to start the year? I think it's something you consider if Sharpe just, again, absolutely grabs it by the throat and goes, this is mine. I don't expect that, and that's not a shot at Shaedon. I just think Shade's going to kind of need to warm into this thing. But I think anything's open, genuinely. To be honest, that's ultimately where I feel with that. But I feel like right now, you can't just give it to somebody. You got to go out there and show it. Eric Salmella at Eric Salmella. Do you think Ant is struggling early on to do the competition with Scoot for the starting spot? Feels like he's pressing a little bit and not in the flow. No. That competition was snuffed out pretty quick in camp, to be blunt. Ant is struggling, and I think a big part of that was his ankle. Now he's kind of ramping up into things. I'm marking it more as a slow start, even though Ant's had a couple of nights where he definitely wasn't his best. I don't think he was as locked in or tuned in as he normally is or should be. Beyond that, I think it's mostly just been missing shots, particularly from 3. The second Ant starts hitting threes, it becomes a vastly different looking performance. Let's see, right now he is 33% from 3. in seasons where he has like featured minutes kind of a deal, he hasn't shot below 38%. So, okay, I think we all kind of know what he is in that vein. It's like, yeah, the guy can shoot the hell out of the ball. That's the reality. So, if he it's not just the three ball either. It's the mid range because he's performing or underperforming at the rim right now, but it's not egregious. It's just mid range. It's been pretty bad. He's 12 of 37 from three. He's 21 of 64. So, I think you'll need to see him kind of settle in that vein. But yeah, I don't think it had to do about fighting over a starting spot. At Tyler Y 808, what is a realistic ceiling and floor for Roops now? I feel like he's really shown stuff to start the season. Look, everybody knows I'm a Roops guy. I've mentioned this a million times. Chauncey kind of mentioned this the other day in the pregame. Roops is an absolute lunatic when it comes to work, and I think you're seeing the work paying off. As much as the shooting, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Roops actually leads the team in effective field goal percentage. He just doesn't qualify because of the lack of minutes. I think that's the case. Oh, yeah, they're not qualified. But yeah, it is Roops. It's 65.2%. Oh, no, Banton, because he's got the 4 games. 85.3, which is really good. But Roops is at 65.2%. It's a good place to be. Good place to be. He's 8 of 11 at the rim, 3 of 5 in the corner on threes, and he's 4 of 9 overall. So, again, limited group, but a limited sample size. But more than the shooting, because I've always thought he'd be a plus shooter. I figured he'd be about a 37% shooter. His handle and his confidence, those two things have skyrocketed. One has fed the other, and defensively, you're seeing kind of what he can do. Right now, he's had a couple different opportunities for steals. He's getting some deflections. I'd like to see him be a little bit better on the glass, I think is kind of where I'd like to see that go. But I think if you're looking for him, I don't know what his ceiling is. He's still far, far, far too young. But I think the idea of what Ryan Rupert is, what they hope he'd be, or for what they hope he'd be, is this super long, rangy, offensive-minded guard who's got plus defensive tools, and the player, like the archetype that I think they're aiming for, is, and this is going to sound crazy, Jalen Williams. Like, I think that's kind of the hope in him. It's like, I think Cody Williams is kind of the same thing, who's Jalen's little brother. I think those incredible, I mentioned this on Twitter the other day, but I'll mention it here. I was talking to Don McGling in pregame about the differences between defending Chet Holmgren one night and Zion Williamson the other, and how just vastly different those things are. And he was like, yeah, it helps to be this big no matter what, because he's got a 7'6" wingspan. I think he's got like a 9'7" standing reach. And his locker room is basically directly across from Roops, and Roops was on the other side, looking at his phone or looking at video before the game. I can't remember what it was. But I kind of motioned. I go, that guy's wingspan's almost as long as yours. And Donovan looks at me. He's like, no, it's not. He kind of spins in his chair and goes, Roops, what's your wingspan? And Roops kind of looks at him like, huh? He's like, Donovan puts his arms out. He's like, how long are you? Like, and Roops just kind of sheepishly, I don't know. It's about 7'3". Because if you've never heard Roops talk, he talks so soft and so quiet. It's funny because he's just a tremendously long human. And DC was incredulous. I won't repeat what he said, but no bleeping way. Some version of that. He's like, how are you, 6'7", 6'8", and I'm 7'3", and we almost have the same wingspan. He goes, those things are dragging on the ground, man. He's like, I knew you were long, but good God. And it was just kind of, a reminder of just how freakishly long Roops is. Donovan's in the 99th percentile of wingspan in the entire NBA. Roops is, for 7 inches shorter? 7 inches shorter, but has a wingspan 3 inches shorter. Roops is +7 or +8, depending on what you think his actual height is. That's insane. And so, like, if he starts putting stuff together, like all of a sudden he's got a little bit more of a handle. He's got that little spin move. He dribble left, spin back to his right. He got blocked the other day by Daniel Tice, who probably saw some tape on that, was like, this kid likes to spin back. And when you have a pet move, they start taking that away real quick. But I'm not saying his ceiling could be J-Dub, but I think that's the type of player, but I think more of a role player. Roops wants to play make more, and I'd like to see him do that, but I also like that he is being more aggressive than he was and more confident in the past. So that's what I'll say right now. Breadstreet Racing, at Bob Breadstreet. Let's play a game of where we get everything we want. Shea, 2, and Denny all ball out and really click together. The Blazers trade JG, and then the ping pong balls bounce our way and capture the flag. Who starts? Now, it becomes a game of, who takes it? Now, if the Blazers get the number 1 overall pick and Cooper Flagg gets it, Cooper Flagg is starting. The rest is up to everybody else. But that's a trip for another day. But if you're a number 1 overall pick, yeah, you're starting. That's the reality. You're going to get that kind of love. That's the nature of the beast. A lot of questions about Shaedon and him coming back. Who should start? Who should come off the bench? I think we've kind of addressed most of those. So I'm going to go to this next question. At Nerd Runner, and this is something I'm actually diving into a little bit more. Portland's currently in the bottom half of the NBA in defensive rebounding. Do you have a theory on why this is with the size advantage they have? And it is interesting because historically, DeAndre Ayton is one of the better defensive rebounders in the NBA. He's been no lower than the 77th percentile, and that was his second year. Otherwise, he's been 83rd, 77th, 80th, 82nd, 88th, 91st, and now this year, 84th. And his overall percentage is actually the highest it's ever been right now at 25.1, but you have some weird outliers that are out there amongst bigs right now. So you've got guys that I think are plus rebounders, certainly. The problem is right now it's Denny and DA are the only consistent defensive rebounders, which is a little weird. It's a little weird. Denny, when he was with the Wizards, was probably the best defensive rebounding wing in the entire league. It's between him and Jason Tatum. Like that's you can go back and look at it. He was never below, I believe, the 90th percentile as a defensive rebounder. For everybody's like, well, Two's a great rebounder. Two's a great offensive rebounder. One of the best offensive rebounding wings in the entire league. He's in the 93rd percentile right now. But his offensive rebounding percentage is actually better than his defensive rebounding percentage. And I think part of that is just kind of learning how to do that. Now, he's in a different spot now defensively. As opposed from being a 3-4, he's more 2-3 now. And I think that might be part of it, is just kind of learning how to rebound in space. As opposed to kind of where he is now. Because right now his rebounding percentage is literally cut in half on the defensive glass. Last year he was essentially 12%, this year 6%. That's a pretty difficult, seismic drop-off. Now, to steal rate, block rate, foul rate, everything else, good. Like, you're just looking at like, damn, okay, yeah. Which, again, makes sense. But I think rebounding from a different spot is like he's trying to figure that out. I think Denny is trying to figure out how DA rebounds. I think that's part of it. Like, you want to defer to your big man, but if you're like, Denny was a guy, and they've already not butted heads, but I've already seen Denny challenge rebounds that are quote unquote DA's rebounds, and you just kind of have to know it takes the same way a pick and roll relationship kind of works. You just have feel and just reps. You just kind of learn like, okay, he's going to get to that ball. Like, that's part of it. The other part of this is guys have got to start putting bodies on bodies. And I think for Two, he's got to be better about that in the sense of making sure guards don't come in. But the Blazers are also trying to run. And if you're trying to run, that means you leak out. Like that's a real thing, You're trying to get those transition opportunities, and you take a look at what they're trying to get to, and you're like, yeah, I kind of get it. And as much as they send everybody to the offensive glass, they might need to pull back on the transition stuff as well, because there we go. They're not capitalizing right now on those transition opportunities, whether it's off of live rebounds or off of steals. They're in the 17th percentile off of live rebounds, 19th percentile. I'm sorry, that's team ranking. They're 19th overall and 17th overall, which not great. They're 28th overall in the league, so bottom three in points per possession in transition. And a lot of that has to do with the poor finishing. They're just bleh. They're getting out. The frequency's up a bit. Last year they're at 13.5%. This year they're at 15.2%. So it's going up incrementally. They're getting there. But if you want hey, this is good, they're actually pretty good at defending it. They're 12th in the league in transition defense, which if you watched them in the preseason, you were like, how the hell is that possible? Because they got murdered there. But yeah, I think there's some stuff there. I think it's the rebounding stuff, the defensive rebounding stuff. Chauncey and the staff in training camp, one of the things that they drilled was rebounding and defensive rebounding in general. They put a contraption over the rim that has like a bunch of not spikes, but points out. It looks like a death trap around the rim. So that when the ball hits the rim, it just sends it unpredictable ways and makes them really chase. And they had one day during training camp, I think it was Tuesday, where basically they just worked on rebounding endlessly. And it's just, I think that's a big part of it, is teaching guys how to be better rebounders, consistent team rebounders. And one thing Chauncey always highlights that I do believe in, and I think this is a skill that can be developed, but he always highlights a lot of guys in the NBA, not just his guys, but guys in the NBA right now, rebounding. This isn't what Chauncey said. This is me right now. So my belief is that big men are not taught the way to be big men anymore, because there's just no real big men camps. There's no big men coaches. They are when you get to the league, but they're not supposed to develop you in the league. You hone things in the league. I think we've gone too far in the development stuff of you can take a guy like Ryan Repair at 19 years old who's just a baby and hope you find something, but that's supposed to you sit in the incubator for years and you hope that something comes together, right? But I don't think that's the job necessarily of the NBA to teach the raw skills, the baseline stuff. And I think that a big part of rebounding is, number one, it's an innate talent. It's a gift. And defense, I think it's drastically overlooked far too much, where it's it's just try hard. It's no, man, go back and watch Dennis Rodman talk about pew, 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 pew. It's a math thing. You just know where the ball, Kevin Love's 6'8.5" and averaged 14 rebounds a game. The dude, Ben Wallace, just gobbling up everything. Dennis Rodman gobbling up everything. Those guys that just go out there and just num. Donovan Clingan is not as good a rebounder for his size as I think he can be. And I think a big part of that is because he played in high school in Connecticut and he played in college at Connecticut, where he's the biggest, meanest, most space-eatingest thing that exists. He's never had to always high point. He's never had to really put a body on somebody religiously. And I think he's going to learn it. And then he becomes the even better rebounder. But I think that's where they get this. That's the thing that I look at and I go, yes, they suck. Yes, you're right. For sure. I'm not arguing that at all. I think they can improve there, and I think they will improve there. Now, how much? We'll see. We'll see. Big Hoff at Big Hoff 1. When will Rip City Wrap Up be available next day on YouTube? If you go to K2 News' YouTube feed, unless I'm mistaken, number one, it should be there live when we're doing the show. If you go to their channel at K2 News on YouTube, yeah, it's there. So they're like, we stream the show streams live on YouTube, and then of course on whatever network we're on that night, whether it's 2.2 Charge or January 1st when it becomes KUNP, or on K2. So thank you. I appreciate you being interested. But yeah, the show is on live stream on YouTube. So if you guys just want to watch it on YouTube, it's there too. So we're trying to make it as available as possible for everyone. At the Nation said, at what point do Blazers fans realize what this is and stop all the bitching and just enjoy the ride? That's not happening. I've come to that conclusion. So it is what it is. I'm not telling anyone out a fan. I will argue with you about your fandom, certainly, because that's what I do. But I don't know. I think people just like to be angry about stuff. Here's an interesting one. Do you think Time Lord takes Klingon minutes so the Blazers can shop it around? I mean, obviously Klingon needs to be on the court because of rebounding and shot blocking alone. Well, I mean, Rob Williams is a great shot blocker and rebounder too. Like, remember before the injury, Defensive Player of the Year probably should have won it over his teammate Marcus Smart. I mean, not even probably. He should have won it over his teammate. The campaign around that, very weird. But yeah, I think on some nights Rob will play and Donovan might not. And again, this is part of like, hey, let's recoup some value and build his value back up and see what happens. I don't think they can trade DeAndre Ayton because they can't rely on Rob to stay healthy and they can't rely on Donovan to be the starting big. Now, down the stretch in March, you might see Donovan get a lot of minutes. Let's push this thing out there and go. But I think that's an interesting one as far as how that goes. And, it's not optimal, but I think that's exactly what they'll end up doing. And then we'll wrap it up, I think, with this one. Do 2 and Denny have the same skill set, or is the difference great enough to find value in each? Was picking up Denny a mistake in hindsight with 2's improvement? No. Having more wings that do stuff is valuable. And there's a pretty seismic difference in Denny and 2 and how Denny can get to his spots pretty easily and create for others. Like, again, I think a lot of the Denny stuff is coming down to ball not go in hoop. Because if you look at Denny's numbers across the board, okay, right now he's in the 94th percentile in block percentage, 71st percentile in steal percentage. He's not fouling. He's a plus offensive rebounder. He's a plus defensive rebounder. And if you look at his on-off stats, it was actually kind of staggering. He is the second best on-off. And if you look at his lineup data, when you put Denny at the 4, he is a plus 19.6. The Blazers offense is in the 92nd percentile. The Blazers defense is in the 92nd percentile in overall points per possession. Okay? That's where I'm like, hey, maybe we should slow our roll on this stuff a little bit. Like this is, again, it's small sample size theater. And again, I understand that people are like, well, he's not shooting well. I see it. I get it. But all of the other stuff, I feel pretty strongly that it's going to come back around and that's going to be more valuable in the long run. But that's me, and I'm probably more positive than that. Like, I think Denny's a big time ad. I think having wing creators is super, super, super useful. So I'm not, and I don't think him and 2 are the same at all. I think 2's more of a play ender. I think he's more in the Wes Matthews mold, where I think Denny's more like, I would say like big Nick Batum. like more of a not only a primary but also a secondary creator, a swing, a guy who can put the ball down and get to his spots, work as a screener. Like the 3-point shooting is kind of like the make or break, like next level skill. But all of the other stuff that he does, he's a plus rebounder, he's a plus rim protector, he's a plus like stocks guy in general, steals and blocks. So yeah, I tend to kind of fall in line with the Denny being a plus player in general, but also very, 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 very different from two. Both very valuable, I'll say that. So I think that's where we're at now. I have a bunch more content coming out on the Patreon. I'm going to try to get to the podcast at least twice a week, if not more. On some of these earlier games, these road trip games, I will probably pop in and do some Danny After Dark action because I'm not getting home at like 12:30 or 1 in the morning. In which case, those will come infrequently, but those will be a thing that pop up. And then we also might have, if not on this road trip, the next one, we might have a special guest. I am efforting that, one that we have not had here. So I think that'll be a fun one. Other than that, everybody, I appreciate you. Tune in to Rip City Wrap Up tomorrow night after the game, following the game on K2 Charge or on YouTube, youtube.com/, I think it's K2 News. Listen to me and my co-host, Dusty Hera, noon to 3 on 1080 The Fan. Other than that, everybody have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you for all the questions. Like, rate, review, subscribe, do all of the things. Help us continue to grow the show. And, on social media, at Danny Marang, at Jacked Ramsays, and email the show, jackedramsays@gmail.com. Now we can go. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Talk soon. Bye.